Right, hello, and welcome back to Fourth Tier Fever. Now, the first thing you've probably noticed is this is not the voice of Jordan, and it's not the look of Jordan either, and that's because I'm not Jordan. Jordan has gone missing, like Carlisle's defence in the last week, but we'll get onto that later. But no, Jordan's a little under the weather, so instead, you have me. I am, of course, the supporter of all things French fries, free rides, and franchise. I am Luke Payne, supporter of MK Dons. Thankfully, I'm not alone, so you can keep listening. I am joined by our resident Tranmere supporter, Mr. Jack Walton. How are we doing, mate?
Well, could be better, as I've said basically every episode. Not the only relegation battle side at the podcast. I hope, well, hopefully not, but I think Kira might be joining me in that battle soon enough.
Well, I mean, they picked up just about will win Newport. I mean, barely. It sounds like Kieran wasn't particularly pleased, regardless of the result. To be fair, but we've got plenty to discuss this week. To be fair, and I think the best place to start is we're actually going to start with a team that's we've spoken about a lot this season, and it's normally been for all of the wrong reasons. So for once, let's actually be positive because they're winning football games. Of course, it is Swindon Town, who have. I mean, they scored 5 goals against Carlisle the weekend. What's going on? I mean, it's a huge result, and I mean, can we even consider them as relegation candidates anymore, or do you think they've got away from that now?
I think you could tell with Swindon this sort of stretch of games was going to be that decider, whether they were going to be in a relegation battle or whether they were going to be mid-table. I'd like to point out I never doubted them. I was not on the podcast when everyone was slating Swindon. I joined just the bells after, so I survived that. But perhaps Ian Holloway is the right addition. I mean, you look at the end of January, they were against Newport, ourselves, Tranmere, and Carlisle. The three sides are right down there at the bottom, and that was their chance to pick up points. Inside those 3 games, they've picked up 10 goals and only conceded 3. You can't go wrong there, can you? The win against Newport, yeah, it's a solid 2-1 win. The win against ourselves, I watched it. It was, I mean, we'll get onto it. But from a Swindon side of things, they showed that energy, that sort of desire to win. And I mean, what a ridiculous game, by the way. Thrown away by us. But for a neutral fan, what, we were 1-0 up in the 84th minute, I think it was, and they scored 3 goals. Insane game, but it shows that desire to win, that determination to not give up. And against sides like ourselves, that's something that we don't have, and that's why we would be a relegation favourite, and why I don't think they're in the battle anymore. And then that win against Carlisle just proved it. Shame for Carlisle. They were every single time we think they're improving, they go and throw a result like that at us. But yeah, I mean, 5-1, what a win. Paul Glatzel with a goal, Butterworth with a goal, Drennan with a goal. It's good attacking players, and finally someone is getting the best out of them. So it's all positive at the moment for Swindon.
Oh yeah, no, it really is, and I will touch on Carlisle in a second. But I mean, Swindon, they're nearly top half at this point. I mean, it's a case of, as you said, they've just won the important games by beating the teams around you. You pull yourselves away from that battle, and I mean, they're what about
10 points from playoffs at the
yeah,
moment.
they're so far clear. Yeah, I mean, they've played a couple more games, but at this stage of the season you'd rather have the points on the board, especially at that end of the table, because a lot of these teams don't pick up points every week. You know, they're getting a 1 here or a 3 there, but more often than not, it's a 0.
Yeah,
So for Swindon, fair play in Holloway. We've roasted you enough this season, and you've proven us wrong. So
I
fair
have to say,
enough.
I don't think we were the only ones to sort of doubt Ian Holloway, and I think his start of his time at Swindon,
I
it
mean,
was
it was high risk, isn't it?
yeah, it was scary to say the very least, and I feel for Swindon fans after that appointment was made. If we made an appointment like that, I don't know what I'd do. But believe it or not, he's got the squad together, and it is a good squad. There's no denying that. They've got so much attacking talent, and I talked about it on social media at the start of the season. Their attack is one of the most exciting attacks in the league for me because they're so. There's a mix of young, but there's also energy. Um, I didn't know whether Mark Kennedy could get the best out of them. Obviously, he couldn't, but it shows that those players are still good enough because they're getting the goals now and a fair amount of them as well.
Well, yeah, I think it's just giving them a certain amount of stability. Because I think that's the important thing when they've all these things going off in the background, off the pitch. I think the one thing they want is a bit of stability on the pitch, and I mean, sure, they're going on a great run. You're probably not bothered if they compete towards the top end at the minute. You just want to make sure your club is stable and safely in League Two, which I think they've done at this point. It would take a bit of a collapse, to be fair. Whereas for
Yeah,
Carlisle, if we're talking about collapses, well, yeah, 5 goals conceded. That is, yeah, it's
it's
quite scary
staggering.
for me as a Dons fan actually, because it kind of reminds me of last season of whenever there was a big game, we conceded 4 goals to Mansfield, 5 goals to Stockport, a ridiculous amount of goals that we won't talk about against Crawley. But it just seems like they don't. But Williamson's teams just don't have the mental strength to win when it matters most. Because yes, Swindon are in form, but they were one of the teams that were kind of around you in the table for at least a little while. You'd hope that Carlisle would at least be able to compete. And I mean, the standard of defending for the goals was just awful. They just weren't fighting for it, and you've got to be concerned by that, surely.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the table, yeah, they're rock bottom at the moment. Never a good sign. But I don't know. I think naturally, as with football, you look at teams that have signed loads of players, they've got a new philosophy. And I think we'll always repeat it. I don't think that the appointment of Mike Williamson was right in the slightest. It's a completely different style. But he's brought what is it? I think it's up to 11 players now. He's potentially
Yeah,
got
it's,
a
it's
whole
double
starting
figures at
11.
least, yeah.
Yeah. So surely it'll take a little bit of time to get those to gel. And I do like the signings. And again, I thought they had a good squad at the start of the season. You just need the right person to get them to gel and to get them to be able to work together to the best that they can. Um, they've changed the philosophy. I thought Luke Armstrong, um, he would have been a great number 9 for any side in the division, but didn't suit Carlisle's tactics, their playing style. He's now gone, so that's opened the door to someone who can, be of that wage. And I think they're doing the right moves in the transfer window. There's rumours, and I don't know how sort of believable they are that Mike Williamson might be on thin ice. I wouldn't, given him this window, I would be shocked if he went, but who knows? They're going to be panicking. They've already brought one manager in. They've brought countless amounts of players in. They've probably got 2 changing rooms full at the minute, and they're still rock bottom. So it's what's
Yeah,
the next step?
well, I think they've got to keep backing their guy at this point, because as you say, they've brought in all of these signings, and they've just given Williamson the whole of January to just turn over half of the squad essentially, and
Yeah,
performances aside from this 5 goal defeat, have actually been improving. Hopefully for them, this is just an outlier. But we're saying, oh yeah, they're going to need time to gel. But this end of the season, that isn't a luxury you have. There is no time as such. The results have to start coming sooner rather than later. I mean, I'm looking at the next few. They've got Grimsby away, Newport away, Colchester home, Gillingham away. Oh no, sorry, yeah, Gillingham home, and then Barrow away. Most of those are, they're winnable fixtures for the most part. And I mean, there needs to be some sort of bounce back, doesn't there? Those are the right sort of fixtures to show you've got what it takes to at least get yourself away from that bottom two.
Yeah, I think Newport will be the game. I think that'll be if he's not sacked before, then that'll be the decider for Meg Williamson. You've got a team that's on, albeit they won on Saturday on a horrendous run, and we know Kieran's been talking about it. They're scared at the moment, Newport. That's the game. I think that's the game to pin it on. That's the game that if Carlisle are going to get anything, if they're going to escape, that's the one they need to go for. As you alluded to at the start, I don't think they're a side that has that desire. It's that sort of modern way of playing football, if you like. They're well driven in what they do, but they don't have that sort of passion. Or that's the way that I see it. They rely on their moves that they've trained, paying off. And at the moment, it's not. Hopefully, players are coming in, they'll gel, and it will just look a lot cleaner. And I think it's just that final product for Carlisle. It's just those goals. And we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, I think that Newport game will be certainly an interesting one.
Yeah, I think with Carlisle, it's the way they set up, or the way a Williamson team sets up. It's very numerical. It's almost robotic.
Yeah,
Probably both in the emotional side of the game, but also in the style with like the patterns of play. It's all right. You do this enough times, eventually you will score.
exactly.
Obviously, that doesn't actually work. It just gets you a nice XG, but I think Carlisle fans have probably had enough of that little that little stat right there. But anyway, I mean, there is a chance for them to kick on, but for me, it does have to be sooner rather than later. One
Yeah.
team, actually, I'm going to move on to a team at the other end of the table that have had a little bit of a dip in form. I am, of course, talking about Walsall. And I mean, we've all been very, very positive, and for with good reason. I mean, they've been brilliant over the last sort of like month or two, but they've come off of it a little bit. They've had a couple of defeats. They had a draw the other day as well, which could have well have been another defeat, by the way. That was a 2-goal deficit that they came back from. I mean, surely not. They're not throwing away the title, are they?
I mean, it's happened at the perfect time after I don't think we meant to criticize them a few weeks ago. I don't think it was intended that way, but it did come across a bit more negative towards Walsall. That you are a good side. There's no denying that. And I still do think you'll be okay. A few bad results, everyone's going to have them. I think you're looking at it's like saying a Man City. Obviously, not at the moment, but in previous years. It's that sort of, I called it like a robotic. It's that churning out results constantly, and that they have no sort of feeling. It didn't, overwhelm, but they keep getting results consistently, and that's what you need in League Two, especially this year. And it was that consistency that really worked for them. But everyone's going to have an inconsistent period. Unfortunately, Walsall have hit it just as Nathan Lowe leaves. It's whether that's something to look at. But yeah, I mean, it's not a lot. I'm comparing it to my own club. 3 results without a win isn't that bad. But other teams are slowly catching up. But yeah, I mean, I think they'll get back to the best. It's Walsall. We've seen them all season. 18 wins out of 28 games. They're plus 24 goal difference. They're gonna keep churning out results. I think it'll be a little bit of time for the couple of new players that they brought in to sort of gel, but also it's just getting that momentum back again. It's how to combat those defeats. And to be fair, as far as I can remember, they've not had too many like hardships, and this season at least. So it'll be interesting to see how long it takes them to get back into their groove. But I do think they will. I mean, like I say, it's Walsall. They're a good side. We've seen them. They get the job done. and I think it's only a matter of time until they start picking up points again.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I would have been a bit more concerned up until the 78th minute of that last game because, I mean, Bradford lost fair enough. I mean, they were the informed side up until Saturday, and I mean, they'd been brilliant last few weeks. So a loss to them, they had to lose eventually. It's not the most shocking result. Maybe the scoreline was 3-0, but not the worst. You're then looking at a loss to Fleetwood, which is a bit more questionable because I think Fleetwood are a very hot and cold side.
Consistently
Maybe you
inconsistent.
just caught them on the right day, like.
Yeah.
But then Salford, I was going into this thinking, well, Salford don't look particularly good at the minute. They're dipping in form. Surely this is the bounce back now. And for a while, it didn't really happen. And I mean, they have eventually fought back. So maybe this will be the catalyst to getting them back to their best form. I mean, they don't have too many of the top sides left to play either, Walsall. So it would take a monumental collapse for them to throw away the title. I mean, I think automatic promotion that's done. That if they don't get that from here, then then they just need to be studied for that sort of collapse. But I don't think that's going to happen. And to be honest, I think even the title, I think in terms of expectations, I think as long as you get promoted in some capacity, that is the main objective, isn't it? I mean, it'd be a bit disappointing to be up there for so long and not win it. Because don't get me wrong, there are sides that can chase them from here. The gap isn't. It is. I mean, it's still a big gap, but it's not.
It's
It
not
doesn't look
unbeatable.
totally insurmountable anymore. There's a small chance, but I'd still be, a little surprised if they did throw it away to like a Notts or a Bradford or anyone like that.
It'd be interesting to see because I know a lot of people have started to sort of not question them, but bring up the conversation. Um, how will this affect Walsall? Because you've got teams behind them, 3 teams behind them who've not two behind them who've not lost in the past 5 games. Doncaster right behind them who've won 4 of the last 5 and then lost the other. You've got teams that are really chasing them now. And it can be the hardest thing to be not so far ahead, but to be ahead. It's much easier to be the team chasing because you know what you're aiming for. When you're top, you're constantly looking back. And maybe it's sort of caught them. I thought they'd be fine with that. I think they dealt with the pressure of being first very well. I mean, they were 12 points clear at some point. It was insane to see. And they like I said, they didn't seem to have the care in the world. They just kept going. But yeah, who knows what's happened at the minute? Maybe Nathan Logan has sort of shook a couple of things up, and they're just looking for the right sort of connections on the pitch. But I'm sure it'll be fine. It's interesting to know as well. We did, it was 2 weeks ago now. I did have a look through the comments after we talked about Walsall, and they were saying about how well they do in the second half of games. And I mean, like you were saying, you saw it against Salford on Saturday. They did well in the second half. And so maybe it's about just spreading that over the 90 minutes, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Although, it's worth the conversation because teams are right behind them.
Well, yeah, I mean, you'd hope the win comes back sooner rather than later because, I mean, at the bottom end of the table, three games without a win's like, oh, that's all right. Three games
I'm
without a
used to
win
it.
towards the top end's a bit more of a concern. But assuming they then start winning one or two of these upcoming fixtures, because like I said, I think the fixtures are relatively kind. No
Yeah,
disrespect to the teams they're about to face, but
I
you'd
think.
expect a side of Walsall's quality to bounce back eventually, even if it takes a couple of games.
Yeah, I think. I mean, 2 games time they're against Gillingham at home. That Gillingham are in a poor bit of form at the moment, and then in 4 games time they're against Morecambe. That should be 6 points out of those two. Couples average teams compared to Walsall as well in there. You've got Colchester on good form, I think they're against. and then Chesterfield as well, if I'm not mistaken. So you've got a couple of decent teams. Colchester will be interesting because they're in such good form at the moment, climbing that table. But Gillingham, I mean, they are sliding down so quickly. So if you're going to pick up points, it's going to be against them, and then Morecambe as well, just for the quality of their side. So I think they'll come. I think Gillingham will be the game that you would expect out of those sort of four. And I think, yeah, after that, once they get the first win, they'll be fine. They'll fly again. They'll realize how to win again, and they'll be sound.
Yeah, it's just getting the momentum back, isn't it? Really, but yeah, I think let's kick on, and I'm going to open up the floor now because I mean there are a lot of interesting results. I mean even just on Saturday, but looking at the midweek as well, are there any fixtures or any teams you'd particularly like to cover? Uh,
Um,
Take it away.
I'll leave ourselves. I think there's certainly things. I mean, if anyone's seen Tranmere at the moment, there'll be things I want to say, but I'll keep that to the end if we do have time. I think Fleetwood's an interesting one. I mean, they won 2-0 against Walsall on the Tuesday and then lost 4-2 to what was rock bottom at the time, now 23rd in the league, Morecambe 4-2. Consistently inconsistent would be the word to describe them at the minute. I hope Fleetwood fans don't mind me saying. I mean, just looking at the table, what is that? Fleetwood, 9 wins, 9 draws, 9 losses. About as consistently inconsistent.
Perfectly inconsistent.
Yeah. And I mean, they've scored 37, conceded 35. They're very, very close to that. And possibly the result against Morecambe helps with that. But yeah, I mean, Fleetwood, obviously, new manager, there's things in place. But yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, really? Those two results sort of juxtapose each other.
Yeah, it's so strange. How can you go and beat like the runaway league leaders and then lose in sort of crazy fashion to debatably the weakest team in the league? I mean, it's like I was saying previously, like they're just so hot and cold. You don't know which Fleetwood you're gonna get. It's either amazing or it's terrible, and there's not really much of an in between, to be honest. But I'm looking at the next few games, and there is a chance to sort of stabilize themselves and actually get a bit of momentum because I think especially when you're in that sort of mid-table, lower mid-table pack, it is that consistency, isn't it? You want to drag yourselves away from the bottom half and towards the teams at the right end of the table. And I'm looking at Cheltenham, which is a relatively tricky game. I actually rate Cheltenham. I think they're a terrific little side, actually. Then they've got to face Tranmere. So I think from a Fleetwood perspective, you're hoping for a win. And then you're looking at Bromley, AFC Wimbledon. Yeah, then the games start to get a little bit trickier again. But there's a little gap there where you're thinking, okay, there's Cheltenham team around you, beatable. Tranmere in bad form, beatable. There's a chance to stabilise
Easily.
themselves and actually kick on. Do you reckon they're capable of it?
I think this season's gone for Fleetwood. I don't think they've got a chance of relegation. Dare I say it? And I don't think they've got a chance of playoffs, and I hope their fans don't mind me saying that. But you've got Pete Wild in charge, and changing the manager, bringing him in, the mid-table, I don't think you can complain, and I think it's a case of waiting until next season. They've got something to build now. I think he's not. I would want to keep Pete Wild as a manager. I wouldn't want to rush him into anything or make any rash decisions. So I think keeping him on and building long term with him, I think would be the best sort of way forward. So results this season are almost meaningless. As long as you're kept safe, I don't think Fleetwood fans would mind too much. But yeah, I mean, against Cheltenham as well, the next game, that's an interesting one because I also think Cheltenham are perfectly inconsistent. 10 wins, 8 draws, 10 losses at the moment. Lost to Harrogate, win against Salford and Chesterfield, and draw to Accrington. that they are slightly inconsistent as well. So it'd be interesting to see who wins out of those two. But yeah, I think both sides, to be fair, they're looking to build for the future, aren't they? They're not sides that are. I would have hoped they're both looking at the top ends of the table at the start of the season. Cheltenham possibly slightly lower down, but they'll be comfortable. Mid-table finish, start again next year. It's a project at the end of the day.
Yes, I suppose it's just looking at the longer term vision. When you're in that sort of mid-table pack, of course, there's always a chance that you come out of left field and end up in the playoffs somehow. I mean, look what Doncaster did last season. There's always a slim chance at this stage, but I think with the way Fleetwood have been, I think they'd be relatively satisfied, perhaps with just stabilise, focus next season. You got a long-term project there that's maybe you can kick on and start looking towards the top end. Now, of course, the team they lost to, I mean, Morecambe. This is a side that I've consistently been like they're going down. They're 100% going down. But actually, I mean, it was a bit of a wild win, but it puts them in touching distance of not being in the bottom two.
It
Is there
was.
still a chance for them? Is there still a chance? Could they actually survive after being down there for so long?
Yeah, 100%. I think everything I say about the relegation battle will sound like a dig at my own club, Tranmere, but you bring in a striker and the next game he scores 2 goals. That is what is good recruitment to a T. Andy Darcy's come in. I think they were battling with Carlisle for him, if I'm correct, if that's the right player. Them two battling right at the bottom, and also for his signature. Morecambe got it, and he scored 2 goals, and they won 4-2. They won by 2 goals. So there's no denying that he's made an absolute instant impact. And he's got them 3 points, and that's what's needed. That's what's needed in a January transfer window signing. They need to make an instant impact, especially at those nervous points down at the end, down at the bottom and at the top. And then 3 points away from safety,
Yeah,
and against.
it's not much.
Sorry.
I don't go.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, yeah, they're 3 points from safety. They've got Newport next, who are struggling, albeit they won at the weekend. They're going to be looking to escape that on Saturday. Never mind going, further on in the season. Saturday's the one for them. I wouldn't being a fan of the team above them, it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Yeah, it's all dependent on how Carlisle do. I think in terms of the bottom two, as heartbreaking as it is, have my mindset that if nothing changes and it doesn't look like we're going to be down there. There's no indication of anything else, unfortunately. And then it's about those two sides probably as the next two you're looking at. Can Carlisle build that momentum? And if they get a good run of form, I think they'll be sound. I think they'll be safe. And Morecambe might slip back in. If they don't, then I think Morecambe will be fine. It'll be how Carlisle will do will almost depend on Morecambe's. Will also be Morecambe's dependent on their season, if that makes sense.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, I'm looking at Morecambe's next five as well. I'm thinking this is going to be a proper test of their resolve. They've got two fixtures in Newport and Accrington. These are your relegation rivals, really like proper like crucial fixtures. But their other three, you're looking at Notts County, Doncaster, and Walsall. Like, I mean, if you get anything from any of those games, surely that's a pretty big sign that you could actually kick on and have that fight to actually get yourselves out of there. I'm not sure the players necessarily have the ability. I mean, we've criticised them plenty of times over the course of the season. I mean, how many of them were signed from non-league and all the rest of it? But I mean, the fact that they're still in with a chance of actually surviving is probably reasonable going, all things considered. And again, it's another club with a lot going on in the background. So, like I said, I'm looking at the Newport one, and I'm looking at the Accrington one. If they win, well, both of those, then I think that could set them up. But we'll see how things go with that.
I
I'm
think,
actually going to flip us over to the other end of the table because I think there is one result that I would happily skip over, but I don't think I'm going to be allowed to because it's just too crucial of a result. It is, of course, AFC Wimbledon beating Bradford, which I mean, Bradford's run had to come to an end at some point. It's just slightly annoying it had to be that lot, but no, I mean it is a huge win. And I mean it sets them up quite nicely. I mean they haven't done loads of business as such. They don't really have the finances to be able to do it, but they're working very well with what they've got. And I mean, if you can beat an informed side like that, there's always a chance that you can creep towards that top three.
yeah, I mean, I was really impressed. I was going to say surprised. I wasn't surprised, but I was impressed with Wimbledon when I saw them at our ground. And I mean, they didn't have much to do. You can win in first gear, really, but especially Matty Stevens, when he's on form, he's a very hot and cold player. But when he's on form, which has been, fairly often this season, he scores goals. He didn't, obviously, on Saturday, but they still got the win, and they've got those other players around him that can chip in with a couple. Win against Bradford. Obviously, Bradford's an interesting one. Michael Mann's still struggling for games, but I'm sure eventually he will come into the mix. I do believe that he's a good player, and I would love to see him regularly starting in League Two. I just hope after a decently long injury, it's just that sort of feeding him in slowly. But yeah, I mean, it's a good win for Wimbledon. They're going to creep up the table slightly. And we'll see what happens. Obviously, 2 draws in the last 3 against yourselves and Crewe. Both good results. Win against us, we can avoid that. And a win against Newport as well. So, 2 easy results, 2 good draws against solid sides, and then a win against Bradford. So it's all looking fairly positive at Wimbledon at the moment. I don't know.
No, it is.
It's not just, there's just that feeling I get. It's not all there. There's something missing, but they do all chip in with goals. So I think it's just, can they get across the line on games where Matty Stevens isn't on for?
Well, yeah, I think what does it for them is the home form, isn't it? They've made that place difficult to go. And I mean, the last time they actually lost at home was in the cup against Dagenham and Redbridge. So that I mean they're so tough to go down. I mean, I was watching the highlights for that game against Bradford actually, and I mean there were chances for either side, and it could have been a higher scoreline, but it wasn't. They're just very solid at the back, and I don't think there's any getting away from that. And if you make yourself that difficult to beat at your home ground and you're comfortable there, I mean that's where half of your games are. It sets you up nicely, and then all you've got to do is nick a point here or there at opposition grounds, and I mean they've been doing that really well. From a Bradford point of view, though, I don't think that I don't think that result's going to affect them too much. I would still expect a bit more of a bounce back from them. They're still a very good side, even without Andy Cook, and yeah, like I said, I would be shocked if they don't bounce back, especially when their next game is against Harrogate, who really haven't looked convincing to me whatsoever.
Yeah, I think in terms of Bradford, just looking, I mean, the last 5 games, home wins against Grimsby, Walsall, which was a huge win, obviously, and Morecambe. And then 2 away results. There was a win against Carlisle, who were obviously rock bottom of the league, and then a loss against Wimbledon, who are definitely up there. Their away form this season, they've played 14 away games, and they're now 14th in the league in terms of away results. So it's not where you'd want to be for a promotion hopeful, and I think that's where they've got to start picking up points, is that away form. They are so solid at home. They're second in the league for points from home. They've got 33 points from 14 games at home, compared to 14 from 14 away. So it just shows how different their form is home and away, and I think that's what they've got to work on. But we'll talk about it on tomorrow, or I don't know what day it'll be when this comes out. But on deadline day, we'll talk about it more. But I've been really, really impressed with their January business, and I think it's one of the big turning points in their season. Will be that business that they've made, and I'm really excited. If anyone could do it, I think they'd be the ones to sort of surprise us and sneak further up the table.
Excellent plug, by the way. Absolutely love that. I think that's gonna. I think this episode should be going live probably on the day that we are doing our deadline day live. Actually, I think so. It basically we will just be recording. Oh well, we'll be live for all of the deadline day evening. I think some of it's going to be run by our sister podcast over at League One Lowdown, and then you'll have a bit of time with us lot as well. So
Stuck with
if you
us.
do, if you do happen to be tuning in just before or on the day, if you want to get involved with that, then obviously go and check that out. I'll tell you what, there's a couple of other fixtures that I think are worth giving a bit of discussion to. I'm going to touch on the Port Vale result because that was, I mean, it on the face of it, you look at the result on its own, it looks very routine win kind of thing, but it was anything but really. I mean, they had a man down through a questionable red card relatively early on. They go and concede, so they're then drawing against the Accrington side that haven't been great, if we're being realistic. But then they go and somehow secure the win. If anything, at times it probably looked like Accrington were the ones with 10 men rather than Port Vale. And although it's on the face of it, it doesn't look like a statement win. I think low key it kind of is a statement win. What would you have to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, Port Vale are the ones that I feel like we ignore them every podcast, and we don't mean to, but they're just slowly sneaking up the table, and they're doing it quietly, but they are getting there. And I think that was the case on Saturday. I mean, they're slowly picking up those points, and it was a win that you would expect before the game, going a man down and then conceding in the 51st minute, just as you got out after half time. You're possibly looking to just keep it quiet, and then a quick return, and obviously it looked fairly smooth sailing for them. And I mean, they know how to do it. We all expected them to be, first or second, really. So they're not quite there yet, but it was a very good result for them. Disappointing for Accrington. I still think they'll be okay. I think they're sort of relying. It feels like where we were last season. Obviously, we relied on Rob Apter, but also Connor Jennings, a brilliant servant to the club, who's been through so much, and I feel so sorry for him at the moment. But he got double digits for goals and assists, and he really pushed us up. And he got some crucial points for us when we were down near the bottom last season. And that's exactly what Sean Whalley's done this season. I think he's been, for 37 years old, he's been absolutely incredible. 7 goals, 4 assists in 22 starts. He's really got them some points. And that's maybe on his off days where they struggle. And he did well, but he didn't get that end product. And possibly that's where they've struggled the most. Looking at this here, he created the most, what they would call, big chances per game in that game as well for Accrington. And it's just unfortunate that other players couldn't really finish those off.
Yeah, I'd say that that's a fair reflection, and I mean, with Accrington, it does feel like they're coming up to crunch time. Like we've kind of said with a couple of these other teams, they're about to have a couple of really crucial fixtures because, like I said, points at the bottom end are difficult to come by. So when you face off against someone else's down there, that's your chance. That's your one moment to go, right, we're winning this game. We're showing we have to fight to stay up.
Absolutely.
So I really am looking at those next 5, and you're hoping you see at least at least a few points. Keep yourselves just above it because it takes a lot to get relegated from this league, and as long as you're picking up at least a few points here and there, you're probably fine, which I think Accrington are just about doing at the minute.
I think
Whereas with
that's it.
Port
You've got
Vale,
to. So I was just going to say you've got to keep in contact with Morecambe and Carlisle. Keep going the same trajectory that both of them are, and you'll be fine.
yeah, exactly that. Whereas on the flip side, I think Port Vale are just hitting form at the right time. I think that's 5 unbeaten for them now. So I think that's that. We've held off for long enough from discussing our own clubs. If you don't mind, I'm going to hit my team first,
Go for it.
because of course we decided to go and lose 2-1 there to Doncaster, which I mean it shouldn't be a shock to anyone. Since 2004, we have never been to Doncaster and won. So it's a case of we lost there, water is wet. But it's it's just poor. Like it's a very frustrating one. We were kind of forced into a formation switch with all of our defensive injuries. And don't get me wrong, I know that's going to come across as an excuse, but it's a case of in the last couple of weeks, I think we've had Craig McGillivray injured, so that's starting goalkeeper gone. You've then had Nathan Thompson, our new signing and probably best defender, gone. Sam Shering, Luke Offord, also both gone. Joining Lawrence Maguire as well. So that's the majority of the defensive unit. So we're forced into a formation switch, and I don't think we've reacted well at all. To be fair, even the game before against Harrogate, I don't think we were particularly good. We kind of got away with one, really, if we're being brutally honest. And it's a case of the performances really have to start coming soon because we are slipping away a little bit. It's a case of this is the time of the season where you have to make the run. As I was kind of saying with Port Vale, that's 5 unbeaten now. This is the time where you have to start making those sorts of runs. And I mean, for us, there is literally no better time to go and make that run because our next 3 games, all 3 of them are against teams that have lost 4 of their last 5. One of which is Tranmere. Sorry. But yeah, do you reckon it's too late in the season for us? Do we still have a chance, or too little, too late?
I think you'll still have a chance, but I'd be more confident in Colchester and Swindon making a push for playoffs than yourself, which I think is a statement in itself. But I've said it all along. You've got good players, you've got quality players for this league, and players that I would dream of signing for us. They've got the quality to probably do okay in League One.
Well, you've got one of them. You've got Cam Norman.
Well, yeah, you can have him back. But you've got a quality manager as well. As much as I keep saying, there's no reason to sort of panic and rush and not keep the faith, but results should come on paper. Things have gone wrong, obviously, injury wise for yourselves, but it's just turning those results into wins. Whether I see that happening, I'm not too sure. But if it's gonna be a season, I think yourselves, you're looking at promotion constantly. Whether it's in this league or then you get promoted in a couple of seasons, you'll be looking for promotion again. That's the sort of club that MK are. This season's the one to do it. If you're going to do it this season, because I've said it all along, it's not a good League Two. It's the poorest League Two we've probably seen in a long while. If you're going to do it now. And I would hope maybe some investment, deadline day, maybe get a couple sort of, I know there's been some already, but a couple more slight reinforcements. I would say possibly a striker. But yeah, just something to give you that extra little nudge up. Because yeah, maybe a striker would help you if you had a Matty Stevens in there or an Andy Cook. I think you'd be much higher than you are at the moment.
How hilarious would that be if we went in with a bid for Matty Stevens?
Oh yeah, I forgot who he plays for there.
That would be funny.
But I think you need that sort of player up front. You need that number 9, and then
Oh yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that one. I mean, Scott Hogan's notched a couple recently, but it I think it's a problem. You lose someone like Max Dean. It's not even necessarily just the goals; it's the link up that comes with it. He's such a fantastic all around player. He's the player that gets you up the pitch, and then he's the player on the end of it that finishes the move off. And
Yeah,
it's kind of a case of we've got one or the other. Hogan is very much the guy that finishes off the chance, but he's not going to help you until you get to the final third. Or you've got players like Callum Hendry, Ellis Harrison that are absolutely fantastic at link up play, but not particularly consistent with their finishing. So it's also tricky because this is the time of the season where no one's going to let their striker go without parting with a lot of cash. Which, to be fair, I mean, we've proven we're quite happy to spend with some of our signings. I mean, it wouldn't have been easy to get Nathan Thompson in from the league above. Certainly Dan Crowley as well. We've had plenty of conversation on that
yeah,
one, but we've only got 4 games left against teams that are above us in the table. So for me, as long as we actually start picking up these results, which I think I'm looking at these next 3 games and thinking this has to be 9 points or the season's potentially done for us.
yeah.
Which sounds dramatic, but if you can't beat teams that are out of form, then the chances of going on a run are very, very slim. But we'll see how it goes. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you your time now. Let's talk Tranmere. What
Oh,
you
do we
got?
have
Tell
to?
me.
I think, yeah. I mean, looking at the game, looking at the result, it's all the same. Um, it's hard for me to come on here every week because I'm going to say the same thing about Tranmere. Nothing's changed. Nothing has changed. Nothing will change as far as we're aware. Um, so I have got some stats, and I'm taking a different approach today. I've got some stats from the season, and we can see if you would think a manager could stay after these. We've got the worst goal difference in the league at the moment. We've got the lowest goals scored, not only in this division, but also the Championship, League One, National League North and South. The lowest goals scored out of all of those. We've got the joint highest goals conceded. We've got 1 win in the last 9 games, 2 wins in the last 15. We've got 8 points from a possible 42 in away games and scored 9 goals in the last 14 away games. We're now on 8 away defeats in a row, 6 red cards in our last 6 away games. More in depth into stats, we're under 50% in all duels won, 0.8 goals per game. That's coming from 12.6 shots, which is ridiculous. 1.6 goals conceded, so we concede double the amount that we score, and 26 points from 28 league games. We're now third from 22nd in the league. That's my stats section. That's what I've got today. Do
Wow.
you think anyone would stay?
I mean, I'd be questioning if you'd had less players on the pitch from the start, let alone all the red cards on top of that. Yeah, I mean, it's wow. Those
Yeah.
are very condemning stats, and I mean, you can see why you are where you are as a result. Really, I mean, the fact that obviously we were crediting Morecambe and all the rest of it, and talking about Carlisle improving, but you can. You really shouldn't have given them a chance. Like, we say it takes a lot to go down, but well, I mean, I think a lot is happening at Tranmere. That's
Yeah.
that's the only way we can put it, and none of it's particularly good.
And I think, I mean, a lot of it, you look at it, and it's just bizarre. And it's heartbreaking as a fan, and I'm not going to get disappointed by it because I always have. But it's one of them heartbreaking things. I've always believed in the owner. I've always supported them. I think they've given me as a fan the best moments of my life supporting Tranmere. We got back-to-back promotions. It was brilliant. I remember seeing them on the train on the way home from a comeback against Watford in the FA Cup. It was brilliant, and I always believed that they cared. But they were there yesterday to a 3-1 thrashing. They've heard the fans' reactions. Something's got to change. if anyone inside the club that has decisions, something's got to change, and that's it. That's where we're at. If we want to stay up, you've got to start with the manager. I mean, those stats that I read out, 26 points from 28 league games, put it point blank from that. It's got something's got to change. There's no other way of saying it. And I mean, fans are in unison. They want the manager out, and who we get after that, I'm not sure. But I think it's not a question of that. It's just a question of having a change in mindset. You've got players there that have played in this division for such a long time that, you know, they've got the quality to at least survive. They've shown that they've been in this division. If they weren't good enough, then they wouldn't survive. And part of that's probably because we've picked them up when no one else would. But they still should have that quality. A lot of them have had promotion experience as well in probably the past 5 or 6 years. How we've got into a position with those sort of players that we're in is beyond me. I think a lot of people thought we would do well because we do have the players that should be able to push on. But I mean, manager standpoint, it's been bizarre. Decisions have been absolutely bonkers. We've got Sol Solomon, who's a brilliant striker, who's playing in non-league, and we've started him central midfield. Thankfully, that's been changed now. You've got Josh Hawkes, who's just completely missing, and it's just some of the changes are just bizarre. I watched one of his interviews. I mean, after that Swindon game, he said there was 2 players on a yellow at half time. He said to both of them, "Watch your discipline," and he said that. He came out and said that in the interview. He said to both of them, "Watch your discipline." Categorically said, "No, nothing else," and they both got sent off for second yellows. And if that's not a statement that a manager's lost the dressing room, then I don't know what is, quite frankly. That's got to be something that you've got to look at to see that a manager's lost the dressing room. And I there's not much else. I mean, the players themselves, they're putting poor performances. No matter who the manager is, you've got to show that your willingness to win. And it's not been there for many of the players. Albeit Connor Jennings is probably the one that I would let off the most. They've all had flaws this season, but at the moment we're going down without a fight, and especially that Swindon game, we got our red card absolutely collapsed, and it shows. And yeah, it's that position at the moment where I can't see if something does change. It's too late. You've got one day. If our manager's sacked today or tomorrow, what are we going to do? Because we can't bring any players in. Apparently we've not got the finances to bring players in. Lowest goals scored, highest goals conceded. How do you fix that? It's a miracle that we're not bottom already.
I mean, do you even have the finances to get rid of the manager?
Well, that's
First step number one.
I think last season we survived because I was hopeful for Adkins, but we survived. Looking back on it because of Rob Apter, and the fans put money together to keep him here all season. And people have suggested doing that to get another manager in, which is crazy for a football club. But
It's just
where
not a
do you
position you
go
want
from
to
there?
be in.
Yeah, and I think at the moment it's going down without a fight, and putting all those sort of stats into perspective. We've got one of the highest season ticket prices as a fan. How can you justify it? But putting it back to the league, you've got Morecambe who are slowly picking up points. Carlisle, who I believe will gradually shift up the table. Teams around us have got positive signs. Where is ours? I can't see it.
I'm looking at your remaining fixtures as well, and you've only got 3 or 4 games left against the teams around you at the bottom, and which means chances to beat those sides. Most of them have already gone, and you're still down there. Which I mean, obviously that's concerning. I mean, from what you've said, just about everything sounds concerning, but that in particular, the fixtures aren't all that kind either, and
No.
yeah, it's hard to tell where you go next. I mean, manager, obviously, step number one. But if they're not prepared to make that change, then there's very little you can do. January's been and gone. I mean, by the time most people have seen this, January window probably is done at that point, and then you're stuck looking at players that you can get on frees from free agents or non-league, and that's about it. And that's concerning in itself. I'm running out of words to give you, to be honest, on Tranmere. There's no quick fix, is there? There's just no quick fix.
I think personally, I'm running out of words that I can say on this podcast to describe Tranmere. I think there's a lot of fans that
anyway.
I think I'm one of the more calm Tranmere fans that are out there, and I'm saying all of this after having a think about it, but I mean, a penny for the thoughts of Tranmere fans that are at the game. It's an absolute collapse, and then to see the owners there, and nothing's happened. It's 2-3-1 defeats in a week to two teams that are mid-table. If we're going to do anything, that's a disgrace. 2 red cards as well in those games. But I mean, I think I've spoken enough about Tranmere now. That's my weekly rant gone. But I mean, yeah, it's one of those you've got to look at and just try and think about how to get out. But I don't see a way, and that's the most disappointing thing as a football fan. You want to be entertained for the season, but I think we're struggling at the moment.
Well, the one thing you have done perfectly is you've set up the sob story perfectly for your next fixture, which is against Salford. So I'll have to make sure we get Jake on so that when you guys battered them, we'll all be with you on the journey. But yeah, no, the scenes if that now happens.
I tell you what, I think when there's one of us to kick the ball in the net, that'll be the only way that we win a game.
But yeah, I think we're going to have to finish things off there. That hour is pretty much flown by. I mean, there are a few fixtures we kind of skipped over a little bit. Cheltenham beat Chesterfield. Notts beat Gillingham. Grimsby. We went an episode about talking about Grimsby. The second Jordan's not here. Oh wow. But no, they beat Bromley away 2-0. Harrogate getting a point against Crewe. That was probably a talking point, but it's an interesting one. Just Crewe making sure they don't lose again. Pretty standard, to be fair. When Newport beating Barrow and Colchester beating Tranmere. That's just about it. We're there. We have finished this week. So, of course, if you have enjoyed listening to us ramble on for the last hour about the various talking points in League Two, be sure to like, follow, subscribe, whatever it is, wherever it is you get your podcasts from. If you are tuning in before or as Deadline Day Live is going on, be sure to check that out as well. Follow us on all our socials for more content, and because obviously the more you guys support us, the more amazing stuff we can do and fun, cool things to make you all happy as well. So thank you very, very much for tuning in, and we will catch you next time.